Thank you. That was beautiful. As most of us know, we live in a world of fine lines and nuances. There are many who want to keep their faith simple because actual life is not simple. They have celebrated Easter, they know that God loves them, and their work is done for a while. Jesus has risen indeed, and the story for them has ended. Now, we who are in the church in weeks beyond Easter and Christmas sometimes find ourselves get frustrated with those we only see a few times a year. Whether intentionally or subconsciously, many see ourselves in a way of better, more faithful. We get those 10 extra bonus points for showing up the week after Easter in church. We find ourselves acting like the prodigal son's brother who hadn't left yet. And I understand why we do this. I mean, maybe it's just me. But the first few weeks after the big holidays, I struggle because I know that the story isn't over. And yet there are many who have already closed the book. I think of my daughter, who on Monday morning said, "Mom, is it still Easter?" And I said, "Yes." But most people don't know that. When I get this feeling, some of it of superiority and frustration, I find that I have to take time to check myself. Why am I feeling this way? Is it healthy? Is it helpful? I mean, yeah, we want people to fill the pews. We say things like growth and money. And we see those other people as a means to an end. But so often we have to recognize that it's a means to a human standard and a human end. A standard that reflects on us and our success, and not really on God's success of touching people's hearts. We have to then ask ourselves, what is success? Not for me, somewhat for the church, but more importantly, what is success for God? As we have been discussing and revisioning and rethinking about what our post-resurrection big picture looks like in this place, in this church, I hope that you are starting to discover that just because someone isn't physically present here on Sunday mornings does not mean that you are not connected and that they are not connected to a bigger picture beyond today. The church is just not a Sunday morning activity anymore. There are too many other activities. Faith is a daily life, post-resurrection thing that we must participate in. And that we are called to not just come to this place, but most importantly, to go out and continue to share. There may be people who do come in because we live life in a sharing and post-resurrection way with light and joy. But the reality is many will not come back in. Or they may just come in at Christmas and Easter. And so we must remind ourselves that our faith isn't about bringing people in, but making sure that we know how to share with everyone. That everyone outside of these walls needs to know about God's love in deep and powerful ways. And we are not here to serve the church, but to serve God and to show God's love. And we come to the church, hopefully, to find the best ways to go out from the church and serve. If there is just someone that we see on Christmas and Easter in our church, then the blame should fall on us. Not because they haven't come here, because in reality, we should be also going there. We must switch our thinking and realize the goal isn't here, the goal is there. Touch the lives and the world out there. And to start asking ourselves, how are we connected to the people out there who need to know God and love Jesus? Over this past week, especially with the retreat I attended, there was a lot of discussion on connections. And I heard two stories that kind of started to make me think about connections in a different way. One of them was a story about there was once a church who received $200,000 from a woman upon her death. The problem was no one on the leadership had any idea who this woman was. So they started to ask, who is this person? This person ended up being a neighbor of one of their church members. And the church member, every time she went next door, every time she helped, every time she gave a meal, would talk about her church. She would share the lessons and love and experience that she had in her church. And so when the woman died, she believed in a church she had never even attended because she was connected through her neighbor. Another image that was kind of helpful was the idea of a sports team or a sports fan. Many of us celebrate the University of Kentucky basketball team, or we're OSU football fans, or we're Bengals fans. We are fans. We buy paraphernalia, we put it on our cars, we go to games, we don't go to some games, but we're still watching and observing and participating because we feel connected. Even though there's not usually a single person on the University of Kentucky basketball team that knows I exist, I still all of a sudden am connected, and I'm connected through other people who are connected, or season ticket holders, or they're just those different levels of connections in sports. And some places do it better than others, some are local, but it was all of a sudden interesting to remind ourselves that in the church, we often limit ourselves to understanding of membership in almost like two levels. The ones that are here all the time, the really close ones, and the ones that are here most of the time. And outside of that, we don't realize how we're connected. We don't think about the person who's passing the church sign every day on their way to work, who reads what's on there and feels some connection to this church. We don't see all the different levels, whether it be Facebook or just camp or different ways that we are helping to be part of those little touches that make connections and can make big differences in showing God and God's love and Jesus to others. So I have to ask you, as you think about it, how are you sharing your faith life? With your family, your neighbors, your friends, and others. Do you share what is happening in your church and why? Have you shared missions of the larger church? Have you invited people, but not only invited them because that's what you're supposed to do, but more importantly, met them where they are and engaged in important faith conversations that don't always happen when sitting in a pew on Sunday morning, but happen when you're talking to a neighbor around the table? Have you engaged in those conversations about your experience and their experience? Did you share or forward the prayers that we posted on Holy Saturday with others who may or may not be interested? Start to analyze, how are you being the ministers that God has called you as a faith that believes that everyone is a minister? How are you ministering to others, your family, your friends, throughout the world? And not just through your actions, because we love to use that as an excuse. We're like, we're doing great actions, and that's true. But also through your actual words and ability to say, I believe in Jesus. I believe in a resurrection story. And I believe in a God who loves us. Because see, I believe that God calls us to do big things. But that God also really works in those moments of little touches. Those little touches help other people know that no matter what, they are loved and they are invited. In this world of technology, it doesn't mean that you always have to commit to this long conversation, even though those are crucial and important, but that you're always keeping the door open. So when those long conversations need to happen, you are prepared and ready, and other people know they can enter in. Little touches can come in images and words or statements that are only 140 characters or less. Are you a number person? I know, we're in a church. Some people are number people. So let's take a moment and talk about some numbers. 1,468 people. That is the number of people that we reached with our MailChimp newsletter for Holy Week by using a boost on Facebook. 1,468 people saw that we posted about a Holy Week experience. 1,688 people. That's the number of people we reached without a boost. No boost. But several shares for our 5K pictures. 1,688 people saw that we spent time walking and talking around on Palm Sunday. Do you know that an average of 520 people were reached on Facebook with each prayer we posted? That the most was 605 people, and it was shared 3 times instead of just once. That means 605 people had the option to open and read and all of a sudden experience the wonderful words of Will Compton. $490. That's how much we were able to share above and beyond what we usually share for Week of Compassion, which responds to all sorts of needs throughout the world. And as you saw today, a little more than $200 we have been able to share with Disciple Mission Fund, beyond what we usually give. I want to share with you this number, 0.065. That's the percentage that the Disciple Mission Fund says that youth give to the Disciple Mission Fund. But with the leadership of the General Youth Council and the families and everyone else, it looks like we may have just raised around $8,000 because 500 or more people registered along with you for the 5K. So that percentage will go way up. You see, my hope is to encourage each of you to find ways to reach more people with not major touches all the time, then those are important, monumental moments, but really just to take time with the little touches beyond these pews. Continue to find little ways to be the church beyond the building. You can even share with your neighbor the fact that the post office here in Independence, their food drive will support our food pantry. That little piece of information just opens the door to show that our church is trying to reach out and have a conversation within our community. And these are the tools that help us move away from the locked doors that we can hide behind. These are the tools that remind us that Jesus uses his breath to give a sense of Holy Spirit to both the disciples and to us. That breath continues through us today. And our job is to share it. Our job is to bring people like Thomas to it, to show everyone that there may be scars, but the scars of Jesus bring wholeness and healing. We all have doubts like Thomas, but our souls are able to be comforted by the peace that Jesus provides, a peace that all people need. The disciples wanted to stay locked up after the resurrection, after the excitement. They're like, this was fun, I'm going to lock myself in a room. And they believed, but even then they felt a little safer behind closed doors. It's the same reason we lock our cars in certain neighborhoods when we drive through. But ultimately we can't stay hidden behind our fears or our doubts. Jesus reminds us that there is a story to be shared. And we have to remind ourselves that Jesus didn't say, stay here or come in, but instead, Jesus said, so I send you. So I send you. It's hard to share with those who have not seen. But remember that you who are sent are blessed. And so I invite you all in this Easter season that has continued to celebrate the resurrection. Let us overcome our doubts. Let us overcome the darkness and walk out of our tombs and our locked houses and our closed churches. And instead, let us continue to share that Easter is still here. And may we be brave enough to face the darkness that continues and share the peace and light of salvation. The story has not ended unless you stop sharing it. If you would like to be a part of this congregation on whatever level, I encourage you to come forward or stay where you are. No matter what you choose to do, you are invited And God has said, I send you through his son Jesus. Let us sing together. Please stand.
Time in the service when we share our monetary gifts God has blessed us with. The gifts bring help, provides physical and spiritual needs around the globe for our local community. God has given us so much. May we share gifts joyfully.